With Ace gone, we put the word out that we were looking for a new guitar slinger. Among others, we auditioned Steve Farris of Mr. Mister, Robin Ford, who was a great blues player, and Steve Hunter. Richie Sambora, who was in a newly formed band called Bon Jovi, flew in from New Jersey to audition. He wasn't yet the consummate player he would become, and he didn't get the gig. It's funny, but years later I heard him saying he hadn't really wanted the job because he wanted to be in something more blues-based. First of all, it's hard to imagine that he flew to California to audition for Kiss just because he liked airplane food. Also, Bon Jovi's done a lot of great things, but they don't sit next to Howlin' Wolf in my record collection. Eddie Van Halen came to the studio one day knowing we were looking for a guitar player. He listened to some of the stuff we had, including a solo on the title track by Steve Farris. "Wow, why don't you get that guy?" asked Eddie. He was blown away. The fact was, we had rehearsed with Farris, but the fit hadn't been right. Eddie was really unhappy at the time and called me at home a few times. He was pretty out of it, and he wanted to talk about the Kiss solo albums. "Why did you do it?" he asked. "Why did you go off and do solo albums?" It was clear that this had something to do with his own band, which was in turmoil at the time, but he didn't say exactly what was happening. He seemed to be looking to me for answers, but I was never sure what the question was. I wrote the songs Creatures of the Night and Danger with a guy named Adam Mitchell who had been in a Canadian band called The Paupers. Adam had also written with a guitar player named Vincent Cusano, and even though Adam didn't have a lot of nice things to say about Vinnie as a person, he said he was a very talented singer-songwriter and that his guitar playing might fit Kiss. It was a scene that would play out often. People always talked about Vinnie's talent and ability, but they never had good things to say about him as a person. The first time Vinnie came to the studio, he started doing a solo and got down on his knees. I thought it was one of the goofiest things I'd ever seen. You just didn't do that at an audition. He seemed wrong somehow. He was odd-looking and shifty, but we were between a rock and a hard place, and Vinnie ended up playing on a lot of tracks for the album. We had a tour scheduled to start on December 27, 1982, and we didn't have a permanent replacement for Ace yet. I'd felt from the get-go that Vinnie wouldn't work in the band. And in the interim, some nasty rumors had spread about him stealing equipment from the rehearsal studio, but nobody else was on the horizon. When the decision was made to bring him in, I said to Gene, "I just want to go on record saying this is a bad move." With the Creatures tour coming on the heels of several financial disasters, we'd had to tighten our belt so Vinnie didn't get a Porsche. Vinnie wanted to change his name to Mick Fury when he got the gig. Why did everybody come up with cartoon names? I just looked at him like, "Are you serious?" We settled on Vinnie Vincent. The problem was that he had no sense of what to play or when, and he had no ability to self-edit. His playing was like puking. It just came splattering out. He wanted to show how fast he could play, how many notes he could play. He didn't think things out. This became more problematic when the tour started. On stage, Vinnie was hell-bent on using every solo as an opportunity to showcase himself. But it doesn't work like that. It's all about context. Vinnie never seemed to grasp that. He was intensely jealous of guys like Randy Rhoads and Jakey Lee because he thought he was as good as them. He wanted his just due, and his solo spot in the middle of the show became ungodly long. We used to call it the high point of the show because everybody in the audience left to go get high. When we shot the cover for Lick It Up, Vinnie wore a wig, and it looked great. Afterwards, he gave us a hard time and insisted on not wearing it again. But then his hair kind of looked like the Gerber baby. He was very odd-looking anyway, and in that video he looked extra odd as he tried to look sexy for the camera. Vinnie continued to baffle me. He still refused to sign his contract. He kept promising to sign it, but he never did. And there was no way to make him. We were stuck with no choice but to continue. We played in Oulu in northern Finland at the end of November 1983. It was the closest I'd ever been to the Soviet Union, maybe 100 miles from the border. We traveled all day to get there, and when we arrived at the arena, it was bitter cold. I had to wear gloves and several layers of clothing in the backstage area. We were also starving after traveling all day and were very happy when a huge bowl of hearty beef soup was served. We sat around the family-style cauldron and ladled the soup into our bowls. It was so good. vegetables and beef in a flavorful broth, nice and warming. Vinnie ate part of his bowl and then, saying he was finished, dumped the leftovers back into the cauldron in the middle of the table. We all looked at him in disbelief. "Where did you grow up? What are you doing? You just ruined our food." Things with Vinnie were getting worse and worse. He kept pushing his solos to more and more ridiculously epic lengths, stalling the show. The final straw came at a concert back in the States, in Long Beach, California, in January 1984. That night he went on for so long that Gina and I just walked back on stage as he was still playing. I went to the mic and said, "Vinnie Vincent, lead guitar." Solo over. When the lights went down after the next song, Vinnie came over to me in the dark and said, "You bastard, you humiliated me. I swear if he raises his arm, I'm going to knock him out right here." It was a tense moment. I thought for sure the lights were going to come up and that prick would be lying on his back on the stage. He was done. Hot in the Shade hatched a hit single, Forever, that allowed us to go out on a major tour again. The video got into heavy rotation on MTV, and we put together a package tour rotating in some young MTV-friendly bands like Faster Pussycat, Danger Danger, and Winger. One of the bands, Slaughter, had basically started as Vinnie Vincent's backup band after we kicked him out of Kiss. But they too had tired of Vinnie, left him, ditched the name Vinnie Vincent Invasion, and lo and behold, became really successful once they were no longer with him. Their record label kept them and let Vinnie go.